The biggest financial mistake people make in their 20s and 30s is something almost nobody talks about. It doesn't show up on your bank statement, it doesn't appear on your credit report, there's no alert, no warning, no late fee to remind you that you're doing it. It's optimizing your financial life around the wrong goal entirely. Let me explain what I mean, because this sounds vague until I show you exactly what it looks like in practice. And once I show you, you're going to recognize it immediately, either in yourself or in someone you know. Here's the pattern. Person is 26 years old, has a decent job, maybe $55,000 a year. They're doing some of the right things. They have a savings account, they contribute a little to their 401k, they're being responsible. But every financial decision they make is oriented around one thing: looking financially successful right now, in this decade, at this age. The car they drive, the apartment they rent, or the house they rush to buy, the vacations they take and post, the restaurants, the clothing, the general presentation of a life that looks like it's working. None of these things are bad in isolation. The problem is the trade-off that's happening beneath the surface that they're not consciously making. Every dollar going toward looking successful today is a dollar not going toward actually being wealthy tomorrow. And in your 20s and 30s, the decades when compound interest is most powerful, when the gap between investing and not investing is largest, this trade-off is extraordinarily expensive. Today, I'm going to break down exactly what this mistake looks like, why it's so seductive and so hard to avoid, and most importantly, the concrete mindset shift and practical changes that fix it.
Section 1. The real mistake: optimizing for appearance over wealth. The invisible trade-off nobody talks about. Let me give you the clearest possible framing for what I'm describing. Every financial decision you make in your 20s and 30s is, at its core, a choice between present consumption and future wealth. You can spend a dollar today, or you can invest it and let it compound into multiple dollars tomorrow. Most people understand this in theory, but in practice, the pressure to spend, to consume, to display, to participate in the lifestyle that your income bracket is supposed to support is enormous. And it comes from every direction. It comes from social media, where you're constantly exposed to curated highlights of other people's spending. It comes from advertising, which is a trillion-dollar industry designed specifically to convert your income into consumption. It comes from social comparison, the people around you, the neighborhood you live in, the colleagues you work with. And most devastatingly, it comes from a deeply human psychological need to feel like your success is visible, to have evidence, tangible, external evidence that you're doing well, that your work is paying off, that your life looks the way a successful life is supposed to look. The car, the apartment, the wardrobe, the vacations, they're not just purchases, they're signals. They tell the world, and more importantly, they tell yourself, I'm succeeding, I'm doing well, I've earned this. And that feeling is real and valid. There's nothing wrong with enjoying the fruits of your work. The problem is when the desire to signal success in your 20s systematically prevents you from achieving actual financial freedom in your 40s and 50s. The compound cost of looking rich versus being rich. I want to make this concrete with numbers because abstract concepts are easy to agree with and then ignore. Let's take 3 common decisions that people in their 20s and 30s make in the name of looking successful and calculate what those decisions actually cost. Decision 1. The new car at 25. Average new car payment right now is $735 a month. Let's round to $700 for simplicity. Alternatively, a reliable used car for $8,000 cash, no payment, basic insurance, running costs roughly $150 to $200 a month total. The difference in monthly cost, approximately $500 a month. That $500 a month invested from age 25 to age 55 at a 10% average return, $1,130,000. One car decision made at 25, $1.1 million difference in net worth by 55. And here's the thing most people miss. It's not just the money, it's what that money represents. At 55, with $1.1 million invested, you have the option to stop working, or work less, or change careers, or travel, or do whatever you actually want. The new car buyer at 55 has had nicer cars. That's the trade. Decision 2, the apartment upgrade at 28. Let's say you're making $65,000 a year. You're renting a perfectly fine one-bedroom for $1,200 a month. Your friends are moving into nicer places, $1,800, $2,000, $2,200 a month. You feel like you should upgrade. The upgrade costs you $600 more per month. You tell yourself you deserve it. You've worked hard. The nicer kitchen, the better neighborhood, the extra space. $600 a month invested from age 28 to age 58 at 10%, $1,356,000. Over 30 years, the apartment upgrade costs you $1.36 million in foregone wealth. For a nicer kitchen you'll forget about in 3 months because humans adapt to their environments immediately. Again, I'm not saying never live in a nice place. I'm saying be conscious about what you're actually trading. Most people make this decision without ever running the number. They compare the $1,200 apartment to the $1,800 apartment. They never compare the $1,800 apartment to $1.36 million. Decision 3, the lifestyle creep after every raise. This one is the sneakiest because it happens gradually and it feels completely justified in the moment. You get a raise, you worked for it, you earned it, and so your spending rises to match, a little at a time. Better restaurants, more frequent travel, upgraded subscriptions, a slightly nicer everything. If your income goes from $50,000 at 23 to $90,000 at 33, a $40,000 increase over 10 years, and your lifestyle consumes that entire increase, you've made $40,000 more per year for 10 years and have nothing to show for it financially. $40,000 a year invested over 10 years at 10% is $637,000. Instead of building that, you built a more expensive lifestyle that feels normal within 6 months and then requires constant feeding. Lifestyle creep is the financial version of a treadmill. Your spending rises as fast as your income. You're working harder and harder to stay in the same place financially. The number on your paycheck goes up. Your financial freedom does not. The average American earning $75K saves less than 5% of income. The average millionaire next door saves 20% plus. Same country, completely different habit.
Section 2. Why this mistake is so hard to avoid. The psychology that makes this trap so effective. Understanding why something happens is the first step to changing it. So let me walk you through the psychological mechanisms that make this mistake so universal. Because this isn't about being dumb or irresponsible. Some of the most intelligent, educated people I've seen make this mistake consistently. The trap is psychological, not intellectual. Force 1. Social comparison is hardwired into us. Humans are deeply social animals. Our brains are literally wired to compare ourselves to the people around us. It's a survival mechanism that helped our ancestors navigate social hierarchies. But in a modern environment, saturated with social media, advertising, and visible consumption, this wiring works against us constantly. You're not comparing yourself to your actual community the way our ancestors did. You're comparing yourself to a curated highlight reel of hundreds or thousands of people, algorithmically selected to show you the most aspirational, consumption-heavy version of life. The person posting their new car, their vacation in Bali, their penthouse apartment, they're not showing you their credit card statement or their investment account balance. They're showing you the signal, not the reality behind it. And your brain responds to that signal with a cocktail of social anxiety and aspiration that makes the rational, long-term financial decision feel genuinely difficult.
This is not weakness. This is biology operating in an environment it was not designed for. The awareness of this mechanism doesn't eliminate it, but it does give you a fighting chance of making decisions based on your own goals rather than other people's signals. Force 2. Hyperbolic discounting. Future you feels fake. This one is a core finding from behavioral economics, and it explains an enormous amount of financially destructive behavior. Hyperbolic discounting is the human tendency to dramatically overvalue immediate rewards compared to future ones, even when the future reward is objectively much larger. If I offer you $100 today or $150 in a month, most people take the $100, even though $150 in a month is a 50% return in 30 days, an extraordinary investment. The coffee right now feels more real than the extra $50,000 in your retirement account in 30 years. The vacation feels more tangible than the $200,000 you could have instead. The new car makes you feel good today in a way that your future financial freedom cannot. Because future you is abstract, distant, vague. Present you is hungry, stressed, and wants to feel good right now. Wealthy people are not immune to this, but they've developed habits and systems that override it, automation being the most important. When the money moves before you can feel the pull to spend it, hyperbolic discounting never gets a chance to operate. Force 3. The identity trap. Your spending becomes who you are. This one is the deepest and the hardest to untangle. Over time, your consumption habits become part of your identity. The brands you wear, the car you drive, the neighborhood you live in, the restaurants where you eat. These things stop being purchases and start being self-definition. They're how you signal to yourself and others who you are, what group you belong to, what level you've reached. When your financial situation requires you to pull back from these signals, to drive a cheaper car, to move somewhere less expensive, to stop eating out as often, it doesn't just feel like a budget adjustment, it feels like a demotion, like going backwards, like admitting failure. This is why people who intellectually understand that they should be saving more still don't. It's not a knowledge problem, it's an identity problem. The reframe that works, that I've seen genuinely change people's behavior, is shifting the identity from person who has nice things to person who builds wealth, making the investment account the status symbol instead of the car. Your net worth is not visible to anyone, but it is the actual measure of your financial freedom, and training yourself to get emotional satisfaction from watching it grow rather than from external consumption is one of the most important psychological skills in personal finance. Force 4. The comparison group problem. Here's something subtle but really important. Your comparison group determines your spending baseline. If all your friends are spending $200 on dinners and taking $5,000 vacations, that becomes normal. That becomes the floor. Spending less feels like deprivation, even if it's objectively comfortable. The problem is that most people's comparison group is selected by geography, profession, and social circle, not by financial goals. Your college friends, your coworkers, your neighbors, people who may share your income bracket but not your priorities. Wealthy people often intentionally curate their comparison group. They spend time around people who talk about investing, who get excited about their net worth milestones, who see frugality as strategy rather than deprivation. You become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. That applies to money habits as much as anything else. I'm not saying cut off your friends. I'm saying be intentional about whose standards you adopt. The internet gives you access to communities of people who are genuinely excited about financial independence, about frugality as freedom, about building wealth. That community exists. Engaging with it shifts your comparison baseline in a direction that actually serves you.
Section 3. The 20s versus 30s version of this mistake. How the mistake looks different by decade. I want to get specific here because the way this mistake manifests in your 20s is different from how it shows up in your 30s, and understanding both versions helps you catch whichever one applies to you right now. The 20s version, the 3 big traps. Trap 1, the student loan denial.
A lot of people in their early 20s have significant student loan debt, and a surprisingly common response to this is denial, not thinking about it, not engaging with it, not making it a central part of your financial plan. The rationalization: I'll deal with it later, I'll earn more eventually, it's not that bad, the minimum payment is manageable. Here's what the math says. $40,000 in student loans at 6.5% interest with a minimum payment plan stretches to 10 plus years and costs nearly $15,000 in interest alone. That $15,000 in interest is money that does nothing for you. It doesn't buy anything, it doesn't invest anything, it just disappears to the lender. The people who attack student debt aggressively in their mid-20s, living cheap, throwing every extra dollar at the loans, free up hundreds of dollars a month for investing years earlier than people who drag it out. Denial in your 20s about student loans is one of the most expensive forms of procrastination available. Trap 2. The FOMO spending spiral. Your 20s are when your social life is most expensive. Concerts, festivals, weddings, so many weddings. Bachelor parties, bachelorette trips, group vacations, dinners out with friends 3 times a week. None of these things are wrong. Life is meant to be lived. But FOMO, fear of missing out, can push your social spending from enjoyable to financially destructive without you even noticing. The average American in their 20s spends over $300 a month on food and drink outside the home, $200 plus on entertainment, $150 plus on clothing. That's $650 plus a month in largely discretionary social spending before rent, before transportation, before anything else. $650 per month invested from age 22 to age 52 at 10% return, $1.5 million. You don't have to cut all of it, but being intentional about even half of it is transformative. The move isn't to stop going out, it's to be the person who suggests the $20 option instead of the $80 option, who hosts dinner instead of eating out, who goes on the camping trip instead of the resort. You still participate, you just stop letting FOMO dictate you spending without question. Trap 3. Rushing into home ownership for the wrong reasons. This one is controversial because home ownership is deeply embedded in the American success narrative. You get a good job, you buy a house. That's what grown adults do. That's what successful people do. And in many cases, home ownership is genuinely a good decision. In the right market, at the right time, for the right person, it builds equity and stability. But rushing into home ownership in your mid-20s, before you have a clear sense of where you want to live, what career path you're on, whether your relationship is stable, because it's what successful people do, not because the numbers actually work in your specific situation, that is a trap. The hidden costs of home ownership that most first-time buyers dramatically underestimate: property taxes, homeowners insurance, HOA fees, maintenance, typically 1 to 2% of home value per year, closing costs on purchase, 2 to 5% of price, and closing costs if you sell within 5 years. A person who buys a $400,000 home at 26 and sells it at 29 because life changed, job relocation, relationship ended, career pivot, may well lose money after accounting for all the transaction costs. Meanwhile, they've been paying interest-heavy early mortgage payments that barely reduce the principal. The decision to buy should be based on your specific financial situation, local market conditions, how long you plan to stay, and whether you have a solid emergency fund and down payment without draining your entire savings, not on societal pressure or the feeling that renting is throwing money away. Renting is not throwing money away. Renting is paying for shelter with a known fixed cost and no maintenance expenses and full mobility. Sometimes that's the better financial decision. Being honest about that is not failure. The 30s version, the 3 big traps. Trap 4, the lifestyle lock-in. Your 30s is when lifestyle lock-in becomes a real danger. You've been earning for a decade, your income has grown, your lifestyle has grown with it, and now the expenses that felt like upgrades in your late 20s have become baseline. They feel non-negotiable. The $2,200 apartment that felt luxurious at 28 feels necessary at 33. The $600 car payment that felt like a reward at 27 feels like a basic transportation cost at 32. The dining out, the vacations, the brand preferences, they've hardened into habits that are genuinely uncomfortable to change. And so, even as income continues to grow in your 30s, the lifestyle lock-in means investment contributions don't grow proportionally. The money continues to flow toward maintaining the established lifestyle rather than building wealth. The solution is periodic lifestyle audits. Once a year, sit down and ask, which of my current expenses reflect genuine priorities? Which are just habits I've never questioned? Which were upgrades I made when my income grew that I could reduce without meaningfully impacting my happiness? Most people find $200 to $500 a month in expenses they don't actually value when they audit honestly. That's money that can be redirected toward wealth building without any real sacrifice of things that matter. Trap 5. The children cost explosion without a plan. Having children is one of the most meaningful things many people do. I'm not going to frame it as a financial mistake, but the financial dimension of having children is one of the most underplanned aspects of people's 30s, and the consequences can derail a decade of wealth building if you're not prepared. The USDA estimates the cost of raising a child to age 17 at approximately $310,000 for a middle-income family. That's before college. That doesn't include the income loss from career interruptions that disproportionately affect mothers. The trap isn't having children. The trap is having children without having built a financial buffer first, without a solid emergency fund, without adequate life insurance, without a plan for childcare costs that often run $1,500 to $3,000 a month in major cities. People who arrive at parenthood with financial infrastructure in place, savings, insurance, invested assets, manageable debt, navigate the cost expansion of children without derailing their wealth trajectory. People who arrive unprepared often spend their early 30s in survival mode financially, depleting savings, taking on debt, stopping investment contributions entirely, and they often don't recover that lost ground until their late 30s or early 40s. The financial preparation for children is not romantic, but it is one of the most loving things you can do for them and for yourself. Trap 6. Underfunding retirement because it feels far away. In your 30s, retirement is 25 to 35 years away. It's an abstraction, a vague future event. And so contributions to retirement accounts often get treated as optional, the first thing to cut when cash gets tight, the last thing to increase when income goes up. This is one of the most expensive misperceptions in personal finance, because the dollars you invest in your early 30s are the most powerful dollars in your retirement account. They have the most time to compound. Missing them cannot be fully made up for later. A $5,000 contribution at age 30 at 10% annual return is worth approximately $87,000 at age 65. The same $5,000 contributed at age 45 is worth $21,000. You'd have to contribute 4 times as much at 45 to match $1 invested at 30. Your 30s are not the time to underfund retirement. They're the time to establish maximum contributions as a non-negotiable. The 401k maxes out at $23,000 per year, the Roth IRA at $7,000. If you're not hitting those numbers, the time to start moving toward them is now, not when retirement feels closer. The average 35-year-old has $23,000 saved for retirement. To retire comfortably at 65, they'd need roughly $1.5 million. The gap between average and necessary is enormous.
Section 4. The mindset shift that changes everything, from lifestyle optimization to wealth optimization. Everything I've described so far points to one underlying thing: the framework you're using to make financial decisions. Most people, consciously or not, are running a lifestyle optimization framework. Every decision is filtered through, does this improve my current life? Does it make me more comfortable? Does it look good? Does it match the life I feel I should be living at this age? Wealthy people, again, consciously or not, run a wealth optimization framework. Every significant financial decision is filtered through, does this build my financial freedom?
Does it move me closer to the point where work is optional? Is the short-term sacrifice worth the long-term gain? These are genuinely different lenses, and they produce genuinely different decisions, consistently over decades. The lifestyle optimizer buys the nicer car because they can afford the payment and they've earned it. The wealth optimizer drives the used car for 3 more years because they've done the math on what that decision costs them in financial freedom. Neither person is wrong about their values, but only one of them is likely to be financially free at 50. The delayed gratification muscle. There's a famous study from Stanford, the marshmallow test, where children were offered 1 marshmallow now or 2 marshmallows if they waited 15 minutes. The children who could delay gratification went on to have better outcomes across multiple life dimensions decades later. A lot of people interpret this as some people are just born with more self-control, and the research is more complicated than the original study suggested. But what's clearly true, and what more recent research confirms, is that delayed gratification is a skill that can be developed. It's a muscle, and like any muscle, it gets stronger with use. Every time you choose the used car, every time you redirect a raise to investments, every time you say no to the expensive upgrade and yes to the investment contribution, you're strengthening that muscle. And over time, the calculation changes. The immediate reward starts to feel less satisfying when you know the long-term cost. The investment contribution starts to feel genuinely good, not just intellectually correct, but emotionally rewarding, because you've built the identity of someone who builds wealth. This is not about deprivation. It's about retraining what feels rewarding. And it's the psychological foundation of every person who builds real wealth from an ordinary income. The net worth scoreboard. Here's a practical tool that many financially successful people use and almost never talk about publicly. They track their net worth monthly, not obsessively, just once a month, updating a simple spreadsheet. Total assets minus total liabilities equals net worth. And they get emotional satisfaction from watching that number grow. This sounds simple, but it's psychologically powerful because it replaces external consumption as the feedback loop for success. Instead of feeling successful because you bought something that signals success, you feel successful because your net worth number went up. You trained your brain to associate the right behavior with the rewarding feeling. When the investment contribution goes in and the net worth goes up, that becomes the good feeling. When a discretionary purchase keeps the net worth flat or moves it down, that becomes the slightly uncomfortable feeling. You're not eliminating the desire for reward, you're redirecting it toward behavior that actually serves your long-term goals. Start tracking your net worth today. Total everything you own, subtract everything you owe, write the number down, look at it again in 30 days, then 60, then 90. Watch what happens to your spending behavior when you're watching that number every month.
Section 5. The practical fix. 5 concrete changes that redirect the pattern. Everything I've talked about is meaningless without action. So let me give you 5 concrete changes, not abstract principles, actual behaviors that redirect this pattern. Change 1. Run the 30-year number on every major purchase. Before any purchase over $200 a month, car, apartment upgrade, recurring subscription, anything, calculate what that money invested for 30 years would become. $200 a month for 30 years at 10%, $452,000. $500 a month for 30 years at 10%, $1,130,000. You don't have to choose the investment every time, but knowing the actual cost of the purchase in future wealth terms, not just current dollar terms, changes the quality of the decision. Most people buy things without ever calculating what those things cost in opportunity terms. Running this number once for each major decision makes the trade-off explicit and conscious. Change 2. Automate investment before you can spend it.
Set up an automatic investment transfer for the day after payday, not on payday, the day after, so the money lands and immediately moves. The amount should stretch you slightly, not cripple you, but stretch. If it's easy and comfortable, it's probably not enough. Once it's automated, do not adjust it downward except for genuine financial emergencies. Lifestyle discomfort is not a financial emergency. Temporarily living on slightly less than you'd prefer is not a financial emergency. It's the price of building wealth. Change 3. Define your non-negotiable splurges. This sounds counterintuitive in a video about reducing consumption, but it's actually essential. Nobody sustains a financial plan that feels like total deprivation. The key is being intentional about where you spend generously and ruthless about everything else. Decide what genuinely matters to you. Maybe it's travel, maybe it's food experiences, maybe it's fitness. Whatever it is, spend on that without guilt and cut aggressively on everything that doesn't make the list. The enemy of good financial behavior isn't enjoyment, it's undifferentiated spending on things that don't actually matter to you. The goal is not to spend less on everything, it's to spend strategically, a lot on what you love, nothing on what you're indifferent to. Change 4. Find your wealth-building community. Your financial behavior is heavily influenced by the people around you. This is not a weakness, it's social psychology. Use it intentionally. Find people online or in person who are pursuing similar financial goals. Reddit communities like r/personal finance and r/financial independence, local investing clubs, podcasts where you hear people talking about wealth building as a lifestyle. When your comparison group shifts from people competing on consumption to people competing on net worth milestones, your spending baseline shifts with it. Peer pressure can work for you instead of against you. Change 5. Do a quarterly financial review. Once a quarter, 90 minutes, 4 times a year, review your net worth, your investment contributions, and your top spending categories. 3 questions to ask each time. Is my net worth moving in the right direction? Am I contributing at least as much as last quarter? Are there any spending categories that have crept up without me consciously choosing them? This review doesn't need to be complicated, it just needs to happen. Most people's financial lives drift by default toward more spending, less saving, unless they periodically course correct. The quarterly review is the course correction. 90 minutes, 4 times a year. That's 6 hours of focused attention on your financial life annually. The return on those 6 hours is disproportionate to almost anything else you could do with them. Let me bring it all home. The biggest financial mistake in your 20s and 30s is not a specific bad purchase. It's not a single wrong decision. It's a framework problem. Optimizing your financial life around looking successful rather than becoming financially free. Every individual decision that flows from that framework makes sense in isolation. The nicer car, the upgraded apartment, the lifestyle that matches your income bracket. None of them are obviously wrong, but collectively, over a decade or two, they represent an enormous transfer of wealth from your future self to your current image. And the compound cost of that transfer is staggering. The fix is not deprivation. It's not living like a monk or driving a car that embarrasses you or never going on vacation. The fix is a shift in what you're optimizing for, from lifestyle to wealth, from the present image to the future freedom, from how your life looks right now to what your life can actually become. That shift, made consciously in your 20s or 30s, is worth more than any specific financial tactic, because it changes every decision downstream. Here's what I want you to do this week. Calculate your current net worth, assets minus liabilities. Whatever that number is, write it down. That's your starting point. Check it again in 30 days. Then pick one spending category that you've never questioned and run the 30-year investment number on it. See what it actually costs in future wealth. Then decide consciously, with full information, whether it's worth it. That's it. 2 actions this week.